taken out?
Well, I think the key thing we were trying to do was just to restore the principle that has existed in the legislature for years, maintain that principle of having the sponsors be responsible for what happens and making sure that there is legislative oversight. And so that's a key principle that we are preserving, that the sponsor is going to be held accountable for the performance of the charter schools.
As it relates to the performance pay, you said you couldn't run that out because of the raise for the top agreements. Had nothing to do with Senate Bill 5 and the overlapping language that might be on the referendum?
Yeah. No, this had nothing to do with Senate Bill 5. We are working on the provisions about performance pay because we want to make sure that we clarify that it is related to race to the top. And I think it is important to honor the commitment that almost half of the school districts have made with their teachers' unions, with the administration, and frankly with the parents to ensure that we have quality teachers. And so we want to make sure that we get the language correct, that we support those efforts for race to the top, because I think that's one thing we all agree on. We want to have the best and the brightest in the classroom.
Could you go into a little bit more detail on the turnpike language? How far could the administration go before it has to come back to you for permission?
The turnpike language would allow the administration to begin looking at what opportunities might exist, but we would want to be involved in that process. This is a very important issue for the residents of Northern Ohio. I come from Southern Ohio, so I'm not on the turnpike very often. But for people who are making a daily commute on the turnpike, they obviously have a great deal of concern about what the impact is going to be on their lives. And so, and the legislators from those districts want to make sure that they've got some oversight and be able to work with the administration on any proposal to change the way we currently operate.
Would the administration come to you with a negotiated lease already in place, or would you step in before that?
I think it's too early to tell. That will be part of the debate as we continue in conference committee. But it's safe to say that the legislature wants to have some input into any changes that would be made in the operation of the turnpike.
The extra $100 million for the local government fund over the way. Can you give Ohio some idea as to how much that softens the earlier proposed cuts? How much was local government fund going to be cut overall during the biennium in the House passed version, so we can compare that to the $100 million that you're making cut?
Right. So two things to remember. First off, the $750,000 threshold. Any local government that had normally received that or less will continue to receive that. That's going to pick up the counties in the state that don't have the resources that many other counties do. And then, of course, that's about $8 million. The remainder of that then is going to be put into the LGF. As far as what a percentage is, over the course of the proposal, you probably have heard the figure that somewhere around $500 to $600 million, plus the other types of TTP, kilowatt hour, and all that sort of stuff added up to a total, I believe, of about $1.3 billion over the biennium that was not going to be available to local governments. So, the LGF obviously being the lion's share of that, you can begin to see that, it's certainly not going to make a major difference to the 25 and 50% cut the administration proposed, but it's going to move those numbers significantly. And we do have the information available the members will have to know what that means back home in their local counties and other local government entities.
You increased funding for the local government fund, education, passports, some other programs. Were there any corresponding cuts made in other areas, or where was the funding?
Yeah, I think the other cuts were probably programs or agencies that our members felt like that either the administration or the House proposal didn't go far enough. There's not very many of them. Most of the cuts, if you will, are dollars moving from GRF to other special funds. So, in this business, as you know, we look at the GRF spending and then the all-fund spending. In the all-fund spending, I believe we're less than the House was in both years. And a lot of that comes from moving dollars from GRF spending into all-fund spending and that sort of thing. It's probably the lion's share of that.
What's the new price tag on the budget, the total budget?
all funds?
GRF.
If you could give GRF and all funds.
Of course. The GRF total is 27.014 million for 12 and 28.641. I'm sorry, 28.664 for 13. So it's 27.01 and 28.664. That's both state and federal. That's GRF, and the all funds is 55.746, and 12 and 13 is 56.335. That represents a deduct of about 3 million from the House version in 12 and about 53 million in 13.
We understand, right, that this, you say you made these changes because you've got extra revenue and perhaps lower Medicaid caseload. That's from LSC. But that's separate from what we might see in a couple or 3 weeks from OBL, in which they might say, oh, we've got even more extra revenue.
Yeah, well, that's a fair question, but I'm probably quicker than most to point out that Director Keene has pointed out that if we use LSC, Medicaid, and caseload and revenue projections, which the General Assembly's done out of about the last 4 out of 5 budgets, it is our budget office, obviously. When we use those, Director Keene has pointed out that that is probably essentially where we're going to be in terms of increased revenue, because obviously, you know, they use much more conservative numbers going in their budgeting process back in March. So I would think to say that there's going to be increase over and above LSC revenue and caseload. I don't anticipate that from hearing Director Keene talk on a regular basis, I believe.
And just to elaborate on that, I think Chairman Widener was involved in a meeting several weeks ago with the Governor's Council of Economic Advisors, and it was a very much of a mixed bag. Some economists felt that we were going to see an uptick in revenue. Others felt that we might see some more headwinds. And so, you know, our approach has been that this is going to be very conservative. You know, we're not going to spend money on the if-come. That we want to be very prudent in the way that we approach the budget so that we don't find ourselves in the situation that we did 2 years ago.
And I think just to carry on with that comment, just because we see a few upticks in some months on revenues over estimates, which are very conservative estimates to begin with, I think the administration and the House and the Senate seem to be in lockstep on this particular issue that, we are just probably one tick away from the next recession. And the governor's economists were very cautious in saying, let's not be too optimistic here, and let's take a chance to take a breather. Let's readjust our service level at the state level and our ability to correspond level funding going back to our local governments. Let's just be very cautious and a little bit optimistic that we're headed in the right direction. But as you know, the world affairs, the other economic U.S. Affairs, they all pointed out to us are just, very tenuous at this particular point in time. I think Director Keene wisely points out that when he submitted the budget in March, oil was $85 a barrel. And in the course of the House and Senate having the budget, it's well up over 100, just in a matter of 3 months. So that plus other world affairs and the economy throughout the world, I think is just something we need to be prudent and keep an eye on for the long haul.
On the lottery provision, it looks like the language would require the lottery to contract with a private vendor by next June, but doesn't build any kind of revenue assumptions. Is the idea that a private vendor could operate the lottery more cheaply or efficiently? What's the thinking?
Well, again, we want to create options for the Lottery Commission. We've been sort of stuck in this range of $650 to $700 million of revenue for probably the better part of a decade. There have been a number of presentations that indicate that, depending on what you do with the lottery in terms of more aggressive marketing, you could raise that number, and that could be done through a private management contract, but that's something that the Lottery Commission would look at. The reason that we did not put any money with it depends on how the RFP would be structured. So if they chose to be more aggressive with their marketing, that would have one impact on the revenue. If they chose a different approach, it would be a little bit lower. So until the RFP comes out, that's where you would start getting the projections of what the revenue is. And again, back to my original comment that we're not building into this budget revenue on the if-come. You know, we're counting on revenues that we know are there, that have historically proven to be there, and we're not counting on any additional revenues that may or may not materialize depending on how that RFP is constructed.
Just to be clear, this is not an option, this would require the lottery to contract with private equity.
It would require them, but again, we can't put any numbers with it until they issue an RFP to determine how they would structure it.
Looks like you stuck with the House's decision to not include the pension contribution shift. Can you talk about your thinking behind that?
Well, that is correct. We maintained the House provision on the so-called 12-12 and not put the pension shift in there. We will be continuing to have conversations about that through this week and into conference committee, so those items will still be under conversation.
What about nursing homes? Do you deal with that, or is that something that's probably going to be saved for conference committee?
Likely that will be saved for conference committee because there are ongoing conversations with the nursing homes and the House and the Senate and the administration. There are some policy issues there that we need to deal with, and so those conversations are taking place.
Why $17 a student? Is there something about that number?
Well, there's nothing magic about the number other than the concept that we were trying to get across that, you know, we're trying to reward excellence. Race to the Top is about making sure we have quality teachers. We have a current system of measuring schools where we rate them excellent or excellent with distinction. And it was really a matter of, well, how much money do we have? And if we were to put money into that, how much money could we give those schools as a reward for achieving that level of excellence? And so there's nothing magic about the number other than we just didn't have much money. I think people would love to have given them much, much more if we had the money to do it. But the concept remains the same. Let's reward excellence. We currently measure it. We just want to make sure that we reward those people who achieve it.
Do you have any major changes to the prison privatization or the liquor profits privatization?
I'll let you speak to the prisons.
On the prison privatization, you know, the House has worked their thoughts into a bill. We currently have that bill in the Senate, and we'd like to continue to work that bill in the Senate under that format and hopefully come to resolution. Director King points out nearly every time I meet, we need to come to a resolution on that separate bill if that's in fact how we want to deal with that, because there are dollar significances that he's built into the
What, House Bill 86?
Correct.
Okay.
And on
I'm sorry, is that the sentencing bill?
That's a sentencing.
sentencing, I'm sorry, is that what you asked?
Yep.
Yes, sentencing. And then the second question was about liquor profits and Jobs Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got 3, maybe 4 members working with the administration who are familiar with the legal background it takes to kind of basically describe the securitization of that revenue stream. So suffice to say, I think we will have language before this bill leaves the Senate that will clarify that financial transaction in a much cleaner and simpler way. But again, it's one that we're trying to work with the House and the administration on with our members that have expertise in that particular area. So you will probably not likely see in the sub-bill what the final language in that area will be as it's continuing to be worked in the process.
And we are committed to the concept of the Jobs Ohio, and look forward to getting that language finalized here, you know, in the next week.
Are we still talking about selling off 5 prisons buildings?
Yes, in the terms of the sale of the prisons, the adult facilities, we've kept that division as proposed by the administration and by the House. And we've simply clarified, I believe there's one DYS facility. And, you know, I was the one that asked the DRC director to consider helping DYS with that facility sale in order to try to make sure it happens sooner than later so that jobs affected down in that part of the state, thought being that if a private vendor comes in and purchases that facility, they'll be able to reemploy many of the people that won't be able to be relocated throughout the DYS system. So, you know, our language is simply, you know, ask DRC to move that up in priority. I don't think DRC director will put that as a part of his package of his 5 adult facilities, but he's going to help DYS in terms of making the transition with that facility quicker, sooner than later.
Looks like you added language that would